Prime Minister is not here, because where is he, Isabel?
He is in Washington. It is his first ever trip to the White House today. He'll be in the Oval Office having a meeting with President Biden. Let's speak to Ben Habib, who joins us in the studio this morning to talk about all this. Member and advisor, of course, to Reform Party. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
An important moment to see the Prime Minister in the White House. How significant do you see this as?
Well, I think it's the fourth time he's met President Biden in as many months, and if you judge Rishi Sunak by his body language, there's quite a good relationship there, or at least Rishi Sunak has admiration almost flowing through his physical being when he looks at Joe Biden. And I suppose, in a sense, that embodies the special relationship with Rishi Sunak feels. I'm not so convinced it's reciprocated. You sort of get the impression, again, just looking at the physical...
Unrequited love.
It's a sort of unrequited love. And it's ever been thus, Eamon, hasn't it? You know, you look at the United Kingdom, we champion the special relationship. Whenever we talk about the US, we talk about it through that prism. But if you look at the last 25 years of foreign policy, it's always the United Kingdom toddling off after the US like a little puppy dog with its tail wagging, and then forever being let down. You know, so we followed the US into Iraq. They, in essence, got the spoils of Iraq. They got the rights to drill oil. They got the oil proceeds. We followed them into Afghanistan. We spent 20 years there. A couple of £100 billion later, we wake up one morning, the US is gone. And, you know, we've done the same in Ukraine. We are following the US hook, line and sinker in their policy to support Zelensky. We put $2.5 billion in last year. We're going to put another $2.5 billion in this year. The US did $75 billion last year. But we all know that ultimately it'll be the Americans' decision on where Ukraine ends up. And so I think the special relationship, as valuable as we see it, I'm not sure it's really...
Worth the paper it's written on.
Worth the paper it's written on. Yeah.
But, you know, he's done more for repairing that relationship, hasn't he, than any of his recent predecessors. And you certainly get the feel... Rishi Sunak has. He's doing his very best, is he not? I mean, he's a bit of a... what's the equivalent of an Anglophile?
Biden comes to the United Kingdom, he appears in Belfast city centre, and the Prime Minister's nowhere beside him. That is the oddest thing.
It was very strange. It was a snub, for sure. And he didn't come to the King's coronation, which lots of people could see as a snub as well. Yeah. That being said, I do think that the administration, whether it's Biden himself, but those close to him, recognise, whether you like the Windsor framework or not, it's more in alignment with their views on the EU, and it has definitely opened some doors. And the way we've seen him just overnight, I mean, people will be waking up to these pictures, wearing the baseball jacket, the bomber jacket out on the
But
pitch.
he can't wear cool stuff, can he?
What's the equivalent of an Anglophile, if you're talking about American? He's a real American-phile, if you like. He loves it, doesn't he?
He really does. And I think he sort of sees himself as a bit of a maverick, too. Do you remember when he put that helmet on with Zelensky approaching a jet? His head couldn't take it, though, and his body can't quite take the American sports jacket either. But, I mean, you're quite right, Eamon, to bring up Northern Ireland. You know, when President Biden was in Northern Ireland, he said, in order to preserve peace in Northern Ireland, we must have the institutions of Northern Ireland working again. And prima facie, that comes across as an implorement for peace. But actually, it's a threat of violence, if you think about it, because what he's saying is if you don't restore the institutions of Northern Ireland, that's the end of peace. And he was kind of holding Rishi Sunak's arm behind his back. So you talk about the Windsor Framework. It is a SOP. The Windsor Framework is the United Kingdom's giving a SOP to the US and the EU at vast constitutional cost, putting a partition between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I mean, I think it's something the history books are going to look back at and wonder how it was that a great nation like the United Kingdom could voluntarily put a partition down its own middle without a single shot being fired.
Nobody is governing Northern Ireland, or if they are, they're civil servants based in London who are, you know, making these decisions. There was an amazing situation yesterday with the biggest school in Northern Ireland, 2,000 pupils in a grammar school, and the parents had voted for that school to be integrated, so to have both religions as a Protestant school now. And times have moved on, and what an amazing thing. But it has to be implemented by the government in Northern Ireland, except we don't have a government in Northern Ireland.
It is an extraordinary situation,
So you just end up with nothing happening and no progress. And a lot of these kids, of course, who know nothing about the Troubles, sitting saying, well,
what is all this about?
And this is the great threat that the Union now faces, because everyone looking at Northern Ireland, rightly or wrongly, I think wrongly, look at unionism as the cause of this. Say, well, you know, it's the DUP not allowing Stormont to be restored. It's the DUP who are stuck in the trenches with their hard hats on, permanently manning, you know, their rifles, fighting off this threat to the United Kingdom. And it's Sinn Féin out there making the optimistic message about growth, about, I mean, they're very woke, but, you know, they use all of that to capture electoral support, whereas the DUP is kind of in defensive mode. And I wrote an article about this the other day in the Belfast newsletter, saying that we urgently need political unionism to come forward with an optimistic vision for Northern Ireland, championing stuff that Northern Ireland can independently do to get back on its feet as a tiger economy. Why shouldn't it be a tiger economy?
No.
I mean, could do with an optimistic vision, I think, for the whole of the UK.
We certainly could.
And all our policies.
Well, Ben, thank you very much for that analysis. I know we've got you a little bit later on in the programme.